Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call, and I am joined by my brother, the Gritty Broman. How are you, Brent?
I'm well, thank you.
I am well, thank you. Today's podcast is with our friend Ryan Lampers, also known as Stealthy Hunter on Instagram and killer of all mature animals on public land. We met yesterday in Idaho. We made a little halfway point trip. He's not far from me. He lives in Montana. I'm here in Salt Lake. We met about halfway. We messed around with some shelters, set a few up, and then we did we did 3 podcasts, actually. One about shelters, one about food, meal prep, which I think that's my favorite one. And then we did...
Is that because you ate like 60 of those pack of
Man, I don't... Because he is a food wizard and a backcountry food specialist. He's just good about...
Ryan starts talking. Brian just flips his mic up so you can't hear him and then just starts eating these peanut butter balls like they're going out of style.
He just is... he is good with the food. So that's a really good show. And then the third one was Q&A. I read questions that people sent in for Ryan back from when we did the Coues deer hunt together before, but there's a lot we never got to. So yeah. I fired those off, and that was a good podcast. So we'll be looking for those over the next few days. So this first one is a little bit about some of Ryan's gear pieces that he's using right now for backcountry hunting. We dive into a little bit of his experience over the last few years using various backcountry shelters, just his personal likes and dislikes, his personal shelters he's running right now, what he's kind of leaning toward. Also sleeping bag and some other things that he's trekking poles. That's another one. I'm in the market.
Great debate, aluminum or
carbon fiber. Mm-hmm. Nothing terribly groundbreaking, but
you get to hear Ryan's opinion on it.
You get his opinion. Before we get into that, I want to tell you that there's a couple days left
to sign up for the newsletter.
Go to briancall.com, sign up for the newsletter, and you can win a Hoyt bow. We're going to announce that on Monday. So, yeah. So sign up. I think we'll probably pick the name on Saturday. Probably Saturday, Sunday, maybe Sunday morning. So you need to get in early because we gotta prepare the newsletter and so on. So get in. We still have a discount on Stockisons for a few more days.
Till the end of this month.
So use the code GRITTY, get a pair of these swanky Stockisons. And Baird's Beard Oil, put in Baird's 15. You can get a discount on the beard oil, which is legit. Brent and I are rocking some serious beards right now. I'm trying. Yours is more serious. So check that out. And then head hangers. Yep, if you want a skull hooker type of deal, check out head hangers. Use the code GRITTY15.
Mm-hmm. Canvas cutter,
GRITTY15. Mm-hmm. Yeah, go to our YouTube page, and there'll be lots of deals for you, and the codes and links out in the description of the
Phelps
YouTube
game
videos.
Calls. We've got
if you're getting some
Chris Spieler,
if you're getting some calls for turkey season, you're gonna get them from Phelps. GRITTY15. Yeah,
it goes till April 15th.
Before we get into the podcast, I just wanted to bring up a couple of things. Australia is a little strange, and we've been talking about it for a few days. But the other day I mentioned that there was some 18 million cats and 24 million pigs in Australia. So my buddy wrote to me. He said, "I love the latest podcast, mate. By the way, they did a study and they reckon those feral cats are killing about 40 million native birds and reptiles per night."
What's left?
And the biggest cat killed was over 17 kilograms. How much? What is that? What is 17 kilograms?
I don't know. I'm an American, and we, for some reason, have an imperialistic system. Put it in the Googleizer.
It's like 38 pounds.
38 pounds? That might be able to take me. That's basically, let's round up 40, because I like rounding.
Like a bobcat.
A 40-pound cat could take you.
Dang. That's a big cat.
Especially if you were like sleeping at night and it went for the neck. Cat. That's a big cat. Poor Australia.
40 million native birds and reptiles per night. Per night. That's a lot of death.
What's left?
Per day or whatever. It's a lot of animals dying.
No wonder they're shooting them left and right.
So there's a fun fact for you folks right there. I don't know if that's a thing I like or don't like. I don't like it, for sure.
Yeah, no.
But I do like the idea of hunting them. It's a 40-pound cat.
It's gotta be... Is cat tasty?
I don't know, mountain lion is good.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I wonder if they eat them.
They've got to. Like, I just don't see a cat not being
tasty. Can you imagine eating a domestic house cat?
Yes.
Yesterday I talked about how, the pigs were maybe not so edible.
Mm-hmm.
But one of these Aussies showed me, post on the Instagram, caught 2 small pigs a while ago. So I scalded one, brined for 10 days, then roasted in the oven.
Mm-hmm.
Was bloody amazing.
See, if you brine it, you can eat it.
Yeah, I mean, that looks bloody amazing. That looks tasty. Looks like a ham.
I told you. I said you could wet brine the crap out of it, and
I
you
think
could totally eat
cat might taste good. I don't know.
I think you can make anything taste good. It's really the texture you don't have much effect over.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, I think you're going to enjoy this podcast. The next one is we do with Ryan will be about food and food prep. That one's an excellent show. You don't want to miss it. If you do any kind of backcountry hunting or you just want to be fit and strong at age 45 like Ryan is, you'll want to tune into that. Ryan's just dialed on all those things, so it's a pretty cool show. And if you like food, you're going to like that one. Before we dive into that, one more thing I wanted to say. I watched this movie called Triple Frontier the other day. It's like a Netflix movie.
Like a Netflix special?
Yeah, it had like Ben Affleck and some other dudes in there. They like robbed this place. Kind of a long story short, but basically the movie shows human, like how money gets people to do things they wouldn't do normally. The idea of wealth and riches and stuff just sort of overpowers them at a few points within the film, and they make some bad choices because of this greed, and really, really sad things happen as a result of it throughout the film. And you're left at the end of the film going, that money wasn't worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they could give all the money back, they would, even though they have some. You're watching this kind of unfold, and I'm thinking how sad it is, because in the world today, we have a love of money. And there's the greatest lie that we are told, the greatest lie that we buy into in the world today is that money makes you happy, that wealth makes you happy, that having all this stuff makes you happy. And, in the film, there's a dude he's having a hard time as a realtor, making the ends meet, pay the bills, and so on. There's this narrative like we're just screwed, like we deserve a better truck, or we deserve a bigger house, or we should have this, or we should have that. And I say this all the time, money won't make you happy. It doesn't. We all live in America. Even the poorest among us have shelter, food, and transportation in general. I truly believe that happiness has nothing to do with wealth, especially up to a point we live here. Of course, if you're dying because you don't have money, you have absolutely zero food and you're poverty stricken in Somalia, that's a different situation.
I've never once in my life had to eat a bug to survive.
Right.
So I'm fine.
So,
like, really.
But my point is this, that if you are not happy, super happy with life the way it is at this moment, money isn't going to fix it. It's a lie. It's a great lie. Money is not the answer. Money doesn't actually bring you happiness. Happiness comes from other things. And so you watch these guys and they all kind of have this attitude that, man, if we just had millions of dollars, then everything would be fine.
Dude,
we'd all be
race.
Great.
That's what it is. Just a little more. And then you get it. Well, it turns out I need just a little more. And then you work hard and you get it. And then it's a little more.
And a lot of humans, a lot of people I see sacrifice their health for wealth and for more money. And then you look at someone like Tanis and Doran, who, are very, very, shall we say, like frugal. I mean, they live outside pretty much. I mean, in BC, they soak up the outdoors. They just need a backpack, a little bit of food, a teepee, a horse or two. They have a rundown old truck and a rundown old horse trailer that's paid for, and they just load them up and they go up in the mountains, and they have thousands and thousands of acres, hundreds of thousands of acres that they can just roam on. They're the richest in the world. They see the world through a different lens, and they realize that money doesn't bring them happiness. It's not about that. And you see people, if you've been to some of us, I've been to some poverty stricken places only to witness the joy and happiness that these people feel. They're not suicidal. They don't have any, they'd like to be more wealthy so they have nutritional needs met and they're a little healthier. But outside of that, they're so happy. They're so happy with and grateful for the life that they have. And I've just seen that excess and wealth seems to ruin lives more than it helps, more than it enriches. Not to say I'm against money or wealth. I like both, but they're not the answer to a happy life. One of the litmus tests is, am I happy now? Today, right now, where I'm at, with who I am and the relationships I have. And if not, well, okay, what is missing and what can I do to fix that? But if you think money is the answer to fix it, that's not going to do it. You're going to have the same problems, the same unhappiness, the same misery, just with more money. And often that just brings on more misery. So there's an interesting movie, Triple Frontier. Kind of left you a little sad inside seeing people lose so much for greed.
I tend to not care for movies that focus on the negative aspects of human nature. Like, I get it, they're out there, but it is good sometimes to watch something sad for the lessons that can be gathered, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like coming away from a movie feeling sad, but I do see.
So you're saying you should go watch that and then have a good chaser? Go watch Dumb and Dumber or something to feel better afterwards?
I do see lessons learned there. It's a classic story, right? Greed, how it ruins lives. But it's also the seeds of it started from this place of, I deserve more. Mm-hmm. I've been screwed. I don't have enough.
Victim.
And it really is a focus on all the things you don't have. You want to be a happier person. Focus on gratitude every day. Instead of thinking about all the things you don't have, start thinking about how grateful you are for the things you do. And it can take a very sad life and flip it around into a very happy life. Gratitude is powerful. And what accompanies gratitude is humility. And humility is powerful. You can't be grateful without humility. Humility is that thing that allows you to have gratitude. They're intertwined. So, anyway, that's my thoughts on things I like, things I don't like today. This podcast with Lampers, good stuff. Follow him on Instagram at Stealthy Hunter. It's ST Healthy Hunter, all one word. And he's such a cool dude. I hope you enjoy the show and stay gritty. All right, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call, and today I'm joined by my friend Ryan Lampers, also known as Stealthy Hunter. Stealthy Hunter. It's a little overdue. We need to talk, Ryan.
It's been a while.
Need to get into your mind.
Learn how much is in there.
Tap into the wealth of knowledge in between them ears.
Yeah, I don't know where that'll go, but I'll give you whatever I got.
We decided to meet halfway between our homes because you're not too far away. You're about a 6-hour drive, so
yeah. So it took about 3 hours to get down here for me.
Yeah,
Nice drive. Love that
Beautiful.
drive. I'll take that
Beautiful
drive
on my end too.
every day for sure. Saw a lot of critters.
Yours a little prettier though, I'm gonna say.
Oh yeah. The Ennis Valley.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you how many thousand elk I saw today.
Jeez.
Coming down.
So we're sitting here inside of one of Ryan's teepees. You've got it's a Seek Outside Cimarron.
Cimarron. Yep.
Inspected by Barb, it looks like.
Got to be a great gal. Barb.
No, like Mary. By Mary.
Yeah. It's by Mary.
By Mary. So this is a newer shelter for you.
For me, it
and
is.
the first part of this podcast, for those that are listening, Ryan has been, he's a avid hunter. He slays mature animals on public land, just about everywhere you go. And you've been on the podcast before. The most recent one was the one we did in the Sonoran Desert with, what do we call it? The Randy Newberg camp.
That's a good name for it.
Yeah, the Randy Newberg camp down in Sonoran Desert in Arizona, hunting Coues deer. You and I tagged out.
We did.
On Coues deer.
Yeah, actually the only guys
archery
that
Coues deer.
got deer that trip, surprisingly.
Yep,
but
that was feeling lucky there. And me lucky, you talented.
No. I felt as lucky as I've ever been to get that, especially on day 2, like it happened.
You shot a Boone and Crockett class Coues buck with your bow on I think one of your first stalks, second stock maybe, something like that. But that trip was fun. If you haven't heard those podcasts, you need to go back and check them out because it's a fun hunt. The coati is still elusive.
That dang coati, man. I've done a lot of research since then, though. I think we're good. Next trip.
Do you?
I think I got them pegged.
I think we could still go back within the next 4 weeks.
We could.
And get one. Because aren't they rutting?
Wouldn't hurt
until the end of March?
Hurt my feelings. Yeah.
I'd like some revenge on some.
Probably at the end of the rut.
I think I would like some revenge on some jackrabbits as well.
Yeah, they kind of, everything. I mean, we crushed the deer. Everything else, except for the Mearns quail, we did do well on the Mearns quail, but everything else kind of beat us up a little bit. So
yeah. But today I want to talk to Ryan about backcountry shelters because you've got a small arsenal of them you've tried and used in the last year or two. And I want to start off with that, and then I want to get into a little bit of meal prep and backcountry foods. And you brought some
perfect,
delicious,
my favorite topic.
I don't know, peanut butter protein bars or something balls here.
Yeah.
Today, so I'm gonna spare people and not eat one just at this moment on the microphone. But
yeah, once you start too, you're gonna probably want to eat the rest of them.
We're gonna get into that too. So let's start with shelters, Ryan. Let's talk about the one we're in.
Yeah, it's the Seek Cimarron. I'm gonna give this a go this year. This will be a first year for running this. I think just looking at the dimensions of it, the size. You got the little stove jack up there for. It's not a giant tent. It's a couple guy tent or a solo tent for, a late season hunt or a wet weather hunt. I think it'll be great for that, drying out gear and everything. So I'm excited to try this, to be honest. But I have not ran it prior. Last year I ran same company. I ran that Seek LBO, and that thing was great. It was a great setup. It's a 3-piece system, super versatile, the most versatile I've ever had. I had, like say, for example, I ran just one piece of it on my Nevada early archery mule deer hunt, and I lived in that thing. It was great. Just one piece of the LBO. And then as I got a little bit further along, a little bit cooler weather, added another base to it. It's just a perfect teepee at that point. When I had buddies come along, in fact, we had 3 guys, JR, myself, and Jeff Lusk in Colorado, and we ran all 3 pieces. Man, we were about as comfortable as you can get with 3 fellas. We didn't bring the stove on that. We were both tree line, but that thing I love that shelter just because of its versatility, and that thing can withstand. We had some pretty gnarly winds, and man, took it like a champ. So that combination right there, I love it.
Really,
it's good. It's good. So
now, when you say base, I know what you're talking about because you showed me a picture of it earlier. But describe it.
So a base is basically like half a teepee. So what they call it the LBO. but it's basically a base tarp base. So you got half of a teepee on one side. You can unzip that center piece, which is just a straight tarp. It's got the stove jack in it if you want it to. And then you've got the other side of the LBO, which is the other half of the teepee. So you've got 3 pieces. Now you can put the 2 ends together and have a straight teepee. You can put them all together and have this nice long 3-piece.
It sounds crazy, folks, but what it is, if I can give a hand at
for sure.
Picture a really large teepee, like big, and you split it in half.
Yeah.
And each half can make its own teepee.
Yeah.
And then the other option is to split it in half and then put a little tunnel that connects the 2 together to make it even bigger.
Which can be used as just a straight tarp early season if you want to just run that piece for a pretty good sized tarp if you're solo. You could just peel the tarp out of the center of it and you run that. But when you add the tarp to one of those halves, you can run it just with a 2-piece, just like that as well. You have an open end, but no, there's just all kinds of configurations that you could run that thing. So I love it. All the guys that we had in it this last season, loved it. It's a great setup.
Yeah.
Yep.
This one's lighter. The one we're in, the Cimarron. It's going to be a lot lighter, though, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, this one's way lighter.
Would you say this is a 2-man or 1-man?
I'd say it's a 2-man.
Okay. With a stove, without a stove?
You could have ran this a little bit higher and guided out a little bit on the sides and probably made it a little bit more comfortable. But with stove, you could do a 2-man, easy. I think if you have the stove right here where you're sitting, you got a guy on each side.
Yeah.
There's zippers on both sides. You can exit either side. But 2-man with a stove, I think, would be obviously 1-man with a stove would be way comfortable. But
yeah,
I think you're good with 2.
Yeah. I think you can fit 2 in here with the stove.
Yeah. I've got a small stove too. I don't have probably makes more sense to have like the extra large or large that they put out. I've got a medium. It's kind of like the mid-range. It's lighter, and that works. I mean, you got to feed it a little bit more, but it seems to work just fine. So
this is giant for one dude, his gear, stove, and tons of firewood to dry out inside. Oh, yeah. I mean, this is a castle. Yeah. And total weight, do you know, with the poles and the stakes?
If I was good, I could tell you, but I'm not good.
We'll let you know, folks. We'll add that to the podcast.
Yeah.
We interrupt this podcast to give you the specs on the Cimarron. It weighs 2 pounds, 7 ounces. The complete weight, that includes the canopy, the stakes, and the carbon pole, is 3 pounds, 7 ounces. The height is 6 feet, the width is 8 feet, 8.5 feet, and the length is 9.5 feet, with a total of 94 square feet. Now, the new Cimarron Ultralight, which is made out of Dyneema Cuben fiber, that one is 1 pound, 5 ounces. And then with the stakes and the poles and everything included, that would make it 2 pounds, 5 ounces. So almost a pound lighter for the same tent, but made out of a different material, which is a material I love and have been used in a long time. Otherwise, the dimensions are all the same. You're just dealing with a pound less of weight. You can find specs for all the rest of the stuff that we talk about on seekoutside.com. Just go there. You'll see the LBO, the little bug out. You'll see all the weights distributed. It depends on how you run it, whether you run it with a nest, without a nest, different stakes, different poles, stuff like that. But you can go to seekoutside.com and check all that out. And I mentioned the Hilleberg tent. The tent that I've been using the last couple of years is the Nyack, 2-person. A little heavier, bomb-proof though, easy to set up. It's 3 pounds, 5 ounces, 3 pounds, 12 ounces. So, but you can find that at hilleberg.com, but it's the Nyack. Love that tent. Going to try out more of the, what Seek Outside has to offer in the Dyneema Cuben fiber. All right, back to the show. And so you've got this shelter. What you also used a more of a traditional tent with a floor last year.
Yeah, for sure. So most of my life I've ran with a floor in. I just, the floor of this thing, it's fairly new to me. I've been doing it for a couple of years now, but no, I just ran that cheap little MSR Hubba.
Yep.
That little solo tent. I mean, that thing was money. I ran that thing for probably 12, 15 years, and it was great. You know, it fits into a deer bed. You can pitch it on the side of a hill, and it's light. It's under 3 pounds. I think if you get the newer version with the carbon, you're like 2.5 pounds or something like that. So now that thing is great for certain occasions. Big mountain hunting, sometimes that's a ticket. Obviously, a floor is kind of nice to have in certain hunts. For example, we ran into the Frank Church one year, and we ran a floorless back there, a lot of snow. Obviously, with the TP, you've got a significant amount of more coverage. We ran the Kifaru Sawtooth on that one, and we had the hardest dang time finding a spot to put that sawtooth. It was just too big of a footprint, and we were just crying the blues, wishing we had brought our little hubbas, our little solo hubbas, because we could have pitched those all over the place.
Gotcha.
And not had to spend so much time, especially in the dark at night when you're done glassing and you're trying to find a spot to try to find a flat to pitch a bigger footprint TP like that. And no, the floors are nice on certain occasions.
Yeah, I mean, and so what did you run last year? Because you have to seek outside.
Yeah. I ran that LBO last year for the most part, from start to finish.
Okay.
I think there was one hunt I brought the hubba, but quite honestly, for the weight and everything, that LBO is great. And
that LBO reminds me of one of those Z-Packs shelters, the super lightweight Dyneema Cuben fiber ones.
Oh, yep.
Speaking of that, Seek Outside is coming out with a
Cuben fiber,
1 pound 5 ounce Cuben fiber Cimarron.
Yep.
So same thing as this, but made out of Cuben fiber. So it's 1.5 pounds.
Yeah.
Is that just the fabric, or is that the whole thing?
That's the entirety of it.
With the stakes, with the everything.
Not with the stakes. No,
okay.
Not with the stakes. Sorry. Yeah, and they have one of the tents that I'm really curious about that would replace my little hubba for just pitching it wherever, skinny little footprint, and they've got another Cuben fiber Dyneema, whatever you want to call it, tent coming out called the Aeolus. I'm excited to get my hands on that.
That's the one I was talking about.
Because the Aeolus.
So you didn't use that.
No.
You haven't used that yet. Okay.
I haven't ran the Aeolus yet, but ridiculously light. In fact, I think it's 18 ounces. That's it. There are no zippers to this tent. It's got a really neat feature to how you get in and out. But that is so light, 18 ounces. That's it. You're just over a pound.
Yeah.
And, you run it off a trekking pole and you're good.
Wow.
So,
yeah, that looks sweet. It looks awesome. I have a Hilleberg.
Yep.
Couple of them. And I love how fast they pop up.
Yep.
And how easy they are to set up. But this is about 2/3 the weight that you're talking about, or even half, closer to half.
What does a Hilleberg weigh?
They can be heavy, but mine's a single wall.
Are they are they 4 or 5 pounds?
No,
they're not that much.
No, the one the couple that I have, one is 3 pounds.
Gotcha.
2.5 in there, and they can be as much as 4 or 5 pounds. Yeah, but I mean it's bomb proof.
Yeah.
And it goes up like it's a tough shelter.
Yeah. Is it a standalone?
Yes.
Similar to a hubba. Yeah, there is something I did like about that hubba. I mean, you can pick it up, set it wherever you want it.
Exactly.
Change positions, yada, yada. But, the Aeolus is going to be nice just because of the weight. I mean, you're 2.5 pounds on a hubba style, or 3 pounds with a Hilleberg or whatever it is. But when you're talking 18 ounces, that's so light. That's worth it.
I'm a huge fan of Dyneema, of Cuben fiber. I just think it's a great material.
Right.
I just like it itself, and we'll get into it some more down the road, but I've always liked it.
A little bit of expense, but I think the advantages are there for the weight, especially.
Well, we
Especially
pitch this, and then the sun comes out, and then the cold, and it stretches, and then it's all loose, and with
Cuben fiber doesn't stretch at all.
Stretch.
No,
So
it is what it is.
You pitch it, and you're done.
Yep, that's it.
But I will say it is loud. So if it blows in the wind,
Yeah.
it sort of, it's got a little plasticky.
Dude, I am a hard sleeper. I don't care about that.
I didn't care about it either.
I will sleep like a baby hit it with whatever wind
And
you got.
the other thing I really like about it is right here, if this is wet,
Yeah,
tons of moisture on it, and I'm touching it with my hand like this on my arm, I get wet.
Yep.
It leaks through.
Yep.
Cuben fiber, you can touch it, and water will not, moisture will not come through the membrane.
right.
And in addition to that, for some reason, I mean, if you pitch it up a little bit so there's enough airflow,
A little bit of airflow on the bottom.
yeah, you don't get a lot of condensation. I've just really liked it.
Yeah, there are a lot of tricks to kind of eliminating condensation. Some places
Depends
you just
where
can't
you're
avoid
hunting.
it, but yeah, pitching it up a little bit. You could do that with this. I know the Aeolus, you can do that as well, and really avoid all the nonsense of a floorless.
I like my Kifaru Sawtooth a lot. It's tall, like you can stand up in it. It's
Right.
it's huge.
Yep.
But it's a bit big for just two guys going out and backpacking and.
Yeah, we ran it in that wilderness, and great for space. If you had the area to actually pitch the darn
footprint.
thing, it was great. But most times, most big mountain backcountry hunts were pretty hard pressed to find a space that big to put it out. So where we are anyway.
Now, a lot of guys have reservations about using a floorless shelter that have never used one before. It just kind of creeps them out a bit. I like them because you can just roll over in your sleeping bag and pee. But
yeah, that's true. Done that a fair amount of times. No, I mean, look, you're going to have, if you're creeped out by spiders, you'll probably get some spiders in your tent. I know my cousin, Joey Piper, big baby, big sissy when it comes to spiders. I'll tell the world about that. He'll scream like a little girl. But, yeah, you're going to have bugs. You're going to have more rodents coming in, that kind of thing, for sure, if you're in an area where you have it.
Which I just don't have that problem. I've never really had it be a major problem.
No, me neither. Now, I was worried about the bugs, and obviously there's things you can do if you got mosquito issues. This happens to have a mosquito net for the opening here. I've got it tucked in, but you can pin down the sides and keep the bugs out.
But for real buggy areas or just super wet areas, I would rather have a floored shelter.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
But a lot of the stuff we're doing, especially mountain hunts,
Yep.
this is actually pretty ideal if you're below timberline.
Mm-hmm.
You can to be able to dry your gear out, just to have a fire, just to feel good,
Yeah.
just to
That's a
relax
big
in your
deal.
underwear on your sleeping bag.
Oh, man, I tell you, so many years of suffering through cold, like wet nights where you cannot get the frozen off your boots and your clothes and everything's
through
wet.
your bones.
Trying to dry out your clothes in your sleeping bag type stuff.
Nightmare.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so there's something to be said for the comfort of the new shelters. I think you can just stay out in the bush a lot longer.
Absolutely.
Did you notice that this year?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, those big weather hunts, I mean, it really helps your mind, your mental game when you're up there as well. Just having that fire to sit around. If you're pinned down, fog, rainy conditions, you can't get out glassing, just having the fire to stoke, it's a complete game changer.
Yeah.
It's just magic. So, it keeps you out there, keeps you strong.
Yeah, and I want to get into that because I'm intrigued by the idea of cooking on it and using it in that way. Because I know you've run cylinder and I know you've run square stoves.
Yeah.
I know you're a big food junkie. So, but before we move into that space, I want to keep on the shelter here. You are sitting on something. What is this right here?
Oh, this is the ground tarp.
Ground tarp.
Yep.
And who makes that?
Seek makes that. It's a pretty good size. You can see it's huge.
Okay.
Different
And what's
sizes.
the story with the ground tarp?
So the ground tarp, I just throw my pad and my bag on top of this, and I am not on snow. I'm not on mud, wet ground. So, no, you can see how big it is. I don't know the exact dimensions of it, but, you're probably 7 feet long by 4 feet wide.
Why that? I mean, have you used
I used to use
Tyvek?
Tyvek, yeah. I used to use Tyvek and roll it up, and it's real similar. But, this is just something that Seek makes. And no, we used to use Tyvek. It definitely works. There's nothing wrong with it for sure.
But you like this?
I know this is a heck of a lot quieter. Not that
Yeah,
that matters.
Tyvek is loud. No, it is. I mean, it
Yeah.
kind of gets obnoxious when you're, especially if you're with somebody who's sleeping and they move around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can get Tyvek like kind of washed through a dryer
Sure.
or something, or
Yeah.
washer, and break it down.
Yep, you can.
So it's not so loud. But generally, if you just buy a strip off eBay or whatever,
Yeah.
it's kind of obnoxious.
Yeah. You can pick some up, Home Depot, wherever.
So you like this, and you put it through some paces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Reliable.
it works great. Works great. It's about the size of this canvas cutter, which is huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
So, no, it works good. Plenty of space for, this one. You got your bag, your pad, all your stuff. You can cook on top of it, get your clothes on it, whatever. No mud, no wet, no snow.
Okay. Now, can you use a trekking pole on this
Yeah,
teepee?
you can. They've got, so I know when I bought the LBO, it has these little clamp things that you basically put both your truckers together.
Oh, really?
So you attach the truckers and then you've got the extension, whereas one, it obviously isn't going to cover it.
I've been looking into trekking poles.
Yeah.
I'm digging deep into those. It's kind of, holy cow, there's a lot to choose from.
Everybody's got opinions on trekking
Oh,
poles,
yeah.
right?
When I asked that question a while ago, and I'm supposed to report back to the listeners and on my trekking pole journey here, and I've got a lot on the way here I'm testing and I'm going to mess around with, but
Gotcha. So what's the consensus? I'm curious because I definitely have opinions on trekking poles, but aluminum carbon, is that the big?
there was 2 or 3 that stood out above the rest in terms of recommended by the masses. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the best, because that just means they're the most popular selling.
Sure.
That they could be the most widely known about. That could be why. Not necessarily because they perform the best.
Right.
The one thing I'm concerned with is when you get into hyper lightweight and fancy trekking poles, it's like, okay, now we're just looking at one that's going to break on you.
It's going to break on you, man.
And so that's what I'm looking into right now is, yes, I want light. I do like gadgety and fancy, like the ones that are all one thing and you like tick, push a button and they're like, they like come together, That's cool looking.
Yeah.
It just looks like it's going to break.
It's going to break, I'm telling you.
And I hate twisty.
I
hate
the
twisty.
Twisties
poles.
never seem to lock tight enough.
Yeah, I'm a big clip lock
Me too.
guy.
I'm with you. I love the clips. I'll just give my quick opinion. Aluminum bends.
Mhm.
Carbon doesn't. Carbon snaps. So I can't tell you how many guys I've been with that have ran carbon and ranting and raving about how light they are.
Yeah.
That's great until it breaks. And then what's it good for?
Not only that, carbon, it can break once it gets past the point, of how far it can bend, right? And then it
Just
snaps.
very little.
Or carbon can just drop out of your hand and hit a rock and break.
And shatter, yeah.
And that's where aluminum.
Aluminum crushes.
So what's this? Where are you headed with this?
My recommendation is go aluminum all day long. I'll pack a few extra ounces if it means less opportunity to break a pole.
What do you currently use?
I just run those, man, I don't even
Cheap
know.
Costco ones?
No. So those black diamonds, they're awesome. They've got the clamps. Those things hold up on weight. They're aluminum. They've got the kind of that cork grip on them, so it's kind of a comfy grip.
Yep.
Those things are money. I mean, you get years out of those black diamonds, and I think the one thing that you'll have happen to them is like you shear the tip off.
Yeah.
And that's rock fields. And Brian, I hunt a lot of rock fields. For some reason, we always end up in boulder fields in snow, and that's where the carbon poles just pop, quite honestly. And I can't, like I said, I can't tell you how many fellas have they break them at the wrong time. And so now you're poleless, whereas I've never sheared a aluminum pole. You feel the bend. You've been in a rock field, you sink it into a hole or whatever, or not even a rock field, but wherever. And you can feel the flex.
Yeah.
Where once you start feeling the flex on the carbon, notice they pop. So that's my opinion. I'll pack a few extra ounces if it means I'm not going to have to worry about, breaking my carbon.
Well, and often they're being used. They're not just being carried.
Sure. Yeah.
And then if they're versatile and they can be used as a pole for your tent,
That's just
at
it.
the same time,
Look, man, I'm old. You're old. It's nice to have those things. Whether you hike up the hill with them or not, coming down the hill with the weight, with a load of meat, you're always going to end up having them. I always have them now. I used to think they were weird and I didn't use them, but
that comes from people who've never used them.
that's right. And then once you do it, you're like, oh, yeah, I see why all these REI guys are using these things. But yeah, you can, you can run it as a pole. There's a clamp that secures the two together, and you've got, as tall as you want it. So
Dwayne tells me, my buddy Dwayne Sessions, he tells me that they're not trekking poles. They're called hunting sticks.
hunting sticks.
Mm-hmm.
A little more palatable when you call them hunting sticks.
Less, I don't know, Patagonia. Less REI.
Sure. Yeah.
I had a pair of Black Diamond aluminum ones that I used since 2007, I think. And they're light. They're indestructible. I've used them everywhere with super heavy packs. And I even had an emotional, sentimental attachment to them. And then when I went on that BC moose hunt for that film Untamed, I brought them all the way back with me, all on that trip and then back, only to leave them at Dustin's house.
Oh, no.
In Dustin Rowe's house in BC. So he might be able to drum them up. They're somewhere by his cabin up there. But I think it's just time to get another pair. But those
worked for that many years.
Yes.
What is your desire to change? Curious.
Well, that's just it. I assumed since they were from like 2007
Things have changed.
that we have come a long way.
Oh, yeah.
And now there's something new out there that's incredible. Like technology changes. But these weren't that heavy. They're pretty darn light, and they clip locked, and while everyone else around me has poles breaking and having issues, mine have always been rock solid.
Yeah.
And I want to say, when I bought them back then, they were like $110, which back then was like a $400 pole.
Oh, for sure.
And so, but they lasted until I left them up there.
No, they're great.
2018.
I think that clip style in an aluminum pole, I just don't know that you're gonna beat it. There's going to be 1,000 people that argue and say carbon's the way to go. I'll stick with the aluminum.
I'm still looking into it. What I'd like are some poles that are multifunctional. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's something like Spartan Precision Equipment. He came on the podcast, and he has a tripod that's also tent stakes, which is also a gun rest, shooting sticks, and all kinds of things, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe there's a trekking pole out there that's doing 3 or 4 things at the same time.
I don't know.
Come on, Ryan.
I did try. There was a I don't remember the name of them. They were a trekking pole, and they were shooting sticks that extended to where you could stand up. But where they lacked, the shooting sticks are great, but the trekking pole, they suffered the grip, everything. They were lacking there. So,
oh really?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my old tried and true, heavy, but they're not heavy. Maybe a little bit heavier than the carbon. I'm gonna stick with those. Yeah.
So before we move on, tell me about to food, because I'm anxious to get to that. But before we do that, you're sitting on. I saw that when you got out of the truck. You're sitting on a new sleeping bag for you, right? That's new?
Yeah, it is.
So tell me about that sleeping bag, because my beef with sleeping bags, I want plenty of room, but I want it to be super lightweight and super warm, but I want it to be roomy. I hate sleeping bags now where I'm like,
I am with you.
Trapped.
I want lightweight, and a bag, I feel like it should be lightweight. And I have tried different bags, trying to get to that, right at that 2-pound mark for a bag. I'm not a big quilt guy, but I do like a lightweight bag in a 15 degree. And I saw Stone Glacier came out with this. Happen to be in Bozeman now, so I can go down to the shop and actually look at everything and try stuff on and look at it. And they, they pulled this out and they showed it to me. And first thing I noticed was how wide it was. Mm-hmm. It's not like for example, I bought a Big Agnes. I don't even know. It was like a Hitchens or something like that. And it was super light. It's like 2 pounds.
Yeah.
Or 1 pound, 15 ounces. Mm-hmm. But then I got in it, and you're so cramped and you're pressed against the end if you don't get the long version, the 6'6" version. You're basically not doing yourself any favors. You got those feathers so packed down that you're losing, degrees right there. So in my opinion, the perfect bag is a 15-degree bag. It covers almost all the seasons. And, it's treated down, DWR. It's wide, so you can roll around. So I got this. I picked this up, brought it home, and had my wife get in it, had my daughter get in it.
Together.
And it was like, they've never been able to do that with any of the bags I've had. And that's always been an issue with camping is, my wife has to keep like the bag opened up so my little would sleep there. This one, they're both in there, and there's plenty of space all the way down. I mean, it's just the perfect size bag. It's 2 pounds, 3 ounces, and it's a 15-degree. So no, I'm super stoked to use this more. And right now I'm thinking it's the
Pretty
perfect
stoked.
bag. Yeah. Yeah.
My Kifaru Slick bag, I love because it's got that space.
Yeah.
It's roomy. It's synthetic insulation,
Mm-hmm.
and the outside is pretty robust.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could almost just sleep with it outside without, it's just, it's got a tough shell. It is bomb proof. There's no question about it.
Right.
But first of all, I like down. I sleep better in down because it breathes a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Now, everybody knows that the downside to down is that if it gets wet,
Right.
you're hosed.
Yep.
But I got to say, in all the years I've hunted and backpacked and all the places I've been, I have never had a sleeping bag get wet. Not to say it wouldn't happen, but
Sure.
and here's my thing: if I'm going to be hunting with a stove and a teepee,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lot more willing to risk a down bag because, first of all, it's more comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
it's way lighter, and it's way more compact. Like that is way more compact.
Way more compact. That's the big
And so
score.
you're losing weight. It's more compact and it's more comfortable. In every way, I like it more.
Yeah.
It's just comes down to, in the catastrophic end of the world scenario where you get dumped on and rained on and
You can't keep your bag dry for
Yep.
some reason.
and if you don't have access to wood or fire or whatever,
Sure.
and you're going to crawl inside that bag with wet clothes,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to dry out in a down bag.
Yeah, so, and that's always the knock on down is if it gets wet, obviously its value goes down significantly. But thinking back, just like you said, in the early days, the big heavier down wasn't treated. Yeah, I had a couple days where everything got matted down. I ended up with, my bag pressed against my tent and it got wet on my feet and it kind of packed down at the end. But since we've got this treated stuff,
To treat it down.
it treated down.
So it's got a little waterproofing on the down itself.
Yes, I have not had one time.
Just doesn't absorb it.
No,
At those damp levels.
Never had an issue with
Yeah.
it losing its loft, not once. And I come from Washington State, and we're always wet. We're always humid,
Yeah.
and so if it was a big issue, I know I would have switched to a synthetic. I've never had an issue where I woke up and my loft was gone and I was cold or anything like that. So
Yeah.
I just think it's probably made up a little bit too much. With this down they've got now, it's great. And like you said, it is so packable, comparable to a synthetic.
Well, you and I have some hunts planned, and I want my load as light as possible.
Yep.
And I'm weighing that against, the benefits and what you're giving up by going with lighter.
Yeah.
Somebody always gets paid, as they say.
Yep. We got some big trips. We got some big backcountry, big mountain trips. So, weight is going to be huge. Just don't shave that weight on your trekking poles, Brian. That's my only advice.
So I do like the idea of a Cimarron with a stove with trekking poles and the trekking pole adapter. I'd have to see how it compares, in weight. But if, in fact, you can do something like that, that's so nice to make it versatile. The only issue with that is sometimes you want to leave your tent pitched, and then you want to take your poles.
That's it. And the thing is, I've been bringing the pole. I brought it all last year, especially when you got 2 guys or 3 guys. Like for you and me, I'll figure out which is heavier and I'll put that on you. But I'm going to have either the material, the tent itself, or the stove and the pole, and it's going to be real comparable.
It's negligible.
Yeah.
Ryan, are you sure you want to roll with this carbon pole? I mean, do you want aluminum?
I've seen this carbon pole in action. I won't be putting all my weight on it. I have seen it in wind, and it stood the test of that big windstorm we had in Colorado. But no, I wouldn't dare touch that thing for a trekking pole.
Nice. Okay. All right, dude. Well, I think we should wrap this up, and then let's get into food, some meal prep stuff.
Absolutely.
So.